About this bench.
All right, we are going to call this meeting to order. It is 2:31 p.m. on the 10th of May. The sooner we get started, the sooner we can finish. I'm full. I'm having a year. I can't believe it's May already. And yeah. Can we get summer? Anybody? Anybody?
I'm voting for it.
I know. Exactly. I know. It's fun. I know. I'm not being mixed feelings. All right. Roll call. We start from the other side today. Inspector. Here. Clark. Here. I am here. Mr. Van Hook.
I'm here.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
Mr. Lindenboom.
Marginally present.
Mr. Edmondson. On behalf.
Representing Mr. Young.
I'm present.
And Ms. Walsh.
President on time, let the record show.
Yay!
Second time in a row, I think.
We do have quorum.
All AMATS meetings are open to the public. The public is invited to comment. We have a business item, we'll have a presentation by a staff or a consultant, then the committee will be given a chance to discuss it, and then after that, the public will be invited to comment.
Thank you. First item for us is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Seconded by Mr. Evanson. Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. All right, we do have a set of minutes before us from last month, April 12th.
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Okay.
Opposed to approval of the minutes? Hearing none, those are approved. Thank you for keeping us up to date. All right, and moving on to our first item, this is action item 5A, the draft 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan alternatives.
Vivian was present, but she's out sick. And so I'm inviting Aaron to present.
Appreciate it. I was being told when I got here, hey, you're presenting today. Oh, great. Okay.
How badly do you want it to pass?
Yeah. So we got a couple things in front of you. So, before you, as you've had a chance to review, are the draft alternatives that we're asking for approval to go ahead and model those alternatives. So hopefully you've had a chance to review them. We've got some comments. We have a comment response summary. So there was a work session held on April 5th. That was the CAC, TAC, and Policy Committee getting together, kind of talking about what was presented at that meeting, or that work session. It's not a meeting. And then staff went back, got the comments we received from people. We've made our recommendations for them. I have been told we missed a comment. It got lost in the ether somewhere. Brian Lindemood submitted a comment about closing 104th Avenue at the railroad crossing. I just found out about it today, just a little before the meeting, so unfortunately I don't really have a response to it, but it's something we can easily add in and talk about at this meeting if you guys would like to. So, you have a sheet before you that I do need to address, even though it pains me. It's the staff TAC, or the TAC memo addendum. That has some projects on there and is kind of a mea culpa from staff. So while we were reviewing the comments we received from some individuals, as it says in here specifically from Mr. Weddleton, commented that there was a project missing about converting 5th and 6th Avenue to two-way. Well, when staff we were confident it was in there, but when we actually started looking at the project list, we realized it had not been put in there, and we noticed that there were several other projects that were inadvertently missed. So basically what happened is an internal review draft of this big old packet in front of you, the alternatives. It had some bullet points listed in there, and the staff went through and kind of removed the bullet points. We thought they were duplications of projects that were already in the table. And we realized that they were not duplications, they were the actual projects themselves, so they were not in the tables. And so we went through, and this addendum shows you all the projects that were missed, that would be included in whatever we go forward in the model. So did you guys want me to read off the projects and go through them? Or do you want to move on to something else?
Can we have a moment?
Yes.
So I know this is something that you may not be able to answer, because one of my comments was there were several references to a downtown intersection study evaluating need for pedestrian improvements. And my question was, I was in the presentation, it was mentioned Monitor Place, but there was no project on the list. So with these, I guess with some of these non-motorized projects, if we have them in the base case, and there's studies and things like that look like that, and I guess that it was a comment that I didn't make and that I have a question about. If it's not something that really can be modeled, it can be added into the base case at a later time, correct?
Yeah, I mean, any project can be added at any point, you know, until we get to like further on down when we're asking for approval from FHWA or we have the public, you know, certain spots you can't. But right now, if you guys want a project added to the base case, you just add it to the base case. You know, we talk about it, staff looks at it, makes their recommendation. And that particular one that you were mentioning, the downtown, yes, we note in our comments it was missed as well, and so it's being added in. We're not sure why it wasn't included as a project, but it's a study. It's not really going to be modeled. And so I think at some point we said, oh, we're only going to show the project for modeling. Then we changed. It's like, no, we need to show everything. And it's one of those ones that we talk about but got slipped as well. So.
Are there any other, I guess, questions on the addendum?
Okay, so we have our comment response summary as well. It's the large ledger with tiny, tiny, tiny font. So how would you guys like to go through these? Do you want to go through them one at a time? Is there any particular ones you want to talk about?
Is this a question for the committee? Do you want to go through these individually? Or
We recommend we go page by page and address only those that somebody has a specific question with.
Okay. So let's look at the first.
I have a question though about that. For the people who aren't here, like Bob French, who had a number of comments, when will he get these response? Has he already been responded to, or it's just noted that these will be published and there's a responses?
They'll be published and there'll be responses, so we can go take a look at them. I don't know how we're handling responding to the individuals. We tend not to send individualized response to everyone because then that gets too much at certain points when there's a lot of comments.
Well, I asked about Mr. French for a couple of reasons. One, he's active in the Government Hill Community Council that I attend, and I know he'll be at the meeting. I'm sure he'll be at the meeting next week. Well, I'm not sure. He normally comes to meetings. He gives a report, and his second reason is because he's on the Citizens Advisory Committee. So I presume on that basis he'll get responses.
Well, I'm getting my responses here, and they were posted a week ago on the website.
So if you're paying attention, they're there for you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any specific questions about anything on the first page? I guess I do have a question. So I know that one of Bob's questions was related to, bridge apocalypse, and that there already is currently a Glen Highway Integrated Corridor Management Project, study going on right now. So any active projects, you know, and committed projects that are already kind of in process, nothing will be really added to the base case because those are assumed to be occurring, correct?
Yeah, the problem we run into is when are they going to have draft recommendations done, and if they're not going to be done in time, because, you know, the MTP has to kind of cut off when it's accepting projects or when it's accepting edits and has to move forward. The ICM, I don't think, will have enough of their recommendations, Integrated Corridor Management Study for the Glen Highway. We'll have enough of their stuff together for us to be able to incorporate it at this stage.
Yeah.
But when we get to the developing the preferred alternative, they may have stuff available, they have recommendations available that we can look back and incorporate if that's the will of this or the policy committee.
Okay.
So you'll note that we do forward a number of these comments to the Integrated Corridor Management Study, because one of the issues is we want to make sure we're doing a good coordination between, you know, current active project and our MTP, and we don't want to assume something. We don't want to say, yes, we'll do this, when their study says something different. We kind of defer, because they're taking a more detailed look at the corridor with a lot more stakeholders specific to that corridor involvement than maybe what we're doing, because we're a much higher level. So it's not a cop-out, I promise you. It's showing FHWA that we're doing good coordination between studies and plans and everything and the agencies.
And that's the point is that they're doing a study, and the study is what will result in an actual recommendation for a project.
Yep. Same with non-motorized as well. The non-motorized plans are being updated, so when we get recommendations for those, we forward it to them because they have their criteria to go through, their process to go through. And, you know, like for example, the 2035 had a lot of projects that, are they still valid? Should we still be moving forward with them because things have changed since then? So we kind of defer to them to provide recommendations to us for this particular project.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on page 1? Are we ready to move to page 2 then?
Ma'am.
So I have a question related to one of John's Frank's comments.
Yes.
So his comment with the alternatives is he said, you know, that they're not financially constrained at this time, you know, and that I know, I mean, the fiscal constraint analysis happens later. I mean, when we have a better idea of all that stuff. But I mean, if these are considering, these are the base cases, correct?
What's the base case plus whatever alternative scenario we want to model. So the reason we're not in the fiscal constraint right now, sorry, go ahead if you had.
Well, no, so these are, and that's the point, is that the projects listed, the base case is the same for both of them. It's all and then we're looking at kind of the 2 different alternatives, whether it's kind of a continuation of marching down the same path we've been doing it, or kind of changing up our direction a little bit.
Yep.
And then when we put together those project lists and start doing those analysis, that's that's when we do, I mean, and that kind of coincides with doing the fiscal constraints and looking at what projects can and cannot be done and what their impacts to the system are.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the base case is just a starting point for some things. Just so you know, we can take projects in and out of, move things in and out of the base case. That's not set in stone. That's just kind of we think these are needed regardless.
Yeah.
The big thing to think about the alternatives, it's like a mode split change. So the current, the building on today is like a mode split of, mostly vehicular with pretty limited, or the current mode split, what is it? It's like 1% for transit, 9% for walking, and I think 2 to 3% for biking. And so the building on today is kind of keeping that mode split as is. And then the pushing the envelope is looking at, well, let's increase transit to maybe 5% mode split. What would that take? What would it do to the network? Increasing biking to 5%, increasing walking to 10%. And you have a 20% for single occupant vehicle mode split right there. So what would it do to the system? And what projects would you need to get that done? And the point is to kind of look at that and then move to the fiscal constraint portion and say, okay, this is what we want, but here's how much it's really going to cost us. So can we actually do all these projects? And if not, then we shuffle them around, we edit, move them around and stuff like that. You don't want to be constrained at the beginning of by fiscal constraint, because you may miss something. You may not be able to come up with this brand new idea that you're like, oh, well, we can't afford it. Let's not even think about it. Well, you don't know. It does something really beneficial to the network. Maybe we do want to say we can afford it and put it in. So that's why fiscal constraint kind of comes next.
Yeah. Are there any other questions on page 2? Page 3. Okay, I have a question. So the 5th and 6th converting to two-way traffic, and it says the downtown plan, which was adopted in 2007, included a recommendation for converting 3rd and 6th to the couplet, and 5th Avenue is two-way traffic. This is converting 5th and 6th to two-way traffic,
Yes.
and it's not proposing anything else shifting to one-way.
Now, from what we can find, we find that it's basically, this is kind of your trade-offs. Do you want to do a 3rd, 6th couplet with changing 5th to two-way, or do you want to do a 5th and 6th as two-way? Or is there some iteration of that to where we still have maybe like a 3rd and 7th couplet and then 5th and 6th are two-way? We just kind of are basing it on what we've heard so far and putting it forward, and we can adjust it based on agency comments or the public's comments.
No, just a comment on a comment.
Okay.
The emergency evacuation road connections for the hillside. That's been, I'm just thinking back 10 years ago when, the second access was a big deal with private development, and wasn't there an ordinance that made that even harder to do? With me on it, or was it Title 21 change? I don't know. It's been a problem for a long time, but I felt like the ability to have second access has got diluted by some code changes, and that should be looked at again.
I don't know.
Well, I'm thinking of some. It's between the fire code requirements and Title 21 requirements. How fire code, in terms of subdivision, there's fire code, what's the word? Well, let's call it requirements for distances and formulas and all that stuff. And Title 21, at that time, that version of Title 21, was, we were, in private development, we were really, holding to that and recognizing the fire code requirements also, and asking for the maximum access. And it got repeatedly shot down by planning board, and I'm pretty fuzzy on the details, but at the time I remember there's some rewrite of code that really screwed it. So it might have had to do, something to be looked at is how the code all affects, what we've been doing with code over the last few years affects these access issues, regardless of what the, the MVP or anything else.
I know that the subdivisions require certain access numbers based on fire code. So if you have over a certain amount of unit or lots on a subdivision, you have to have more than one or a sprinkler system.
That was the idea, but
Yeah.
that's gotten very diluted for various code changes.
I think this is more of talking about secondary roadway connections versus just access in and out of a subdivision.
They kind of marry up. I mean,
You have way more impact with the secondary road system. You're on the hillside, you're using federal government funding to do impacts to parklands. Huge. Sorry, I know you have something. Stephanie?
Well, no, I guess, are there specific, because it says emergency evacuation road connections requested by AFP. Do we have specific?
I think Mr. Whittleton can answer that.
This comment was from my cousin, J.O.N. Weddleton, but I think I can speak for him. One thing I'm referring, there's a whole bunch, but the fire department, after the fire in Hugh Creek, did come up with a list. They did a survey. So it's not a list. They actually wrote an essay form. And I only have a hard copy somewhere, I don't know where, but Chief LeBlanc would have it. And it was a variety of things. Some that we all know are big ones, mountain air connection, and things like that. But many were very small ones, like if you go to Naknek, which you may not know where it is, but it is about 20 feet away from Diarmid, have that available as an emergency evacuation, and maybe, cut it through and put a gate or something. The end of Birch, leading there, again, to Diarmid, it would be similar. So there's a whole bunch of things like that for safety, evacuation, and access if there's a wildfire. So those for the big ones, and the small ones. And I think the issue with the 30 units per subdivision triggering the dual egress is still, and I think Chris Schutte said just recently they're looking to become much tighter on that, but you would know more. So I mean that again also is a critical development issue.
We're not looking at a subdivision as just one plat as it comes through. We're looking at the neighborhood, because unfortunately you will have one small subdivision come through that's 29 units, piggyback with another 29 unit, with another 29 unit, with another 29 unit, and they all share the same access. Is that really providing the secondary access that is needed for fire code? No. And we have some problems where, locations where that's become an issue. I don't know that I've ever seen that list. I mean, I'm supportive of I'm all for connectivity. I mean, for emergency purposes, it's one of the things that worries me for both for Hillside and for Eagle River, where in some locations we have what are very long cul-de-sacs, that there's one way in, one way out. And that it's a concern for me for a number of reasons, both, specifically as it relates to wildfires and other major events. But I guess I've never seen the list.
I think Chief
Hopefully,
LeBlanc,
I say to Chief LeBlanc, he's only chief until next Friday.
really,
Yes.
get on it quick.
So we need to get the list from him quick. If he has it, it'd be nice to have the list, so. I've read through all the responses to mine previously, so if anybody have any questions or comments on
I guess I don't know who this will this suffice is directed to, but for me, that's fine. If you just do a study, look at his.
All right. Thank you.
all the rest are. There's, on the fourth page, there's a couple. EL. Because we're looking at one end, why don't we look at the other? Oh wait, we are.
Yeah, sorry, I have a couple things before we move on. So first is, how would you guys like us to handle the comment from Linda Mood about 104th? Would you guys like us to include it into the table, into the modeling options?
The only comment on 104th is that I don't agree with the city that it should have been closed 15 years ago. It's
Can
not
you
a pro-
produce a copy of that agreement?
I
Because I
can.
get to see it.
I sent it to you 3 years ago, and I'll send it to you again. But it's not really been a priority for the city. It's not a real burning priority on our end either, other than it does get blocked, and we do have people crawling through trains, and at some point it's going to be a problem. And so someone's going to get hurt. So if, depending on how you want to do the modeling, do you want to include that in the modeling or not?
I mean, up to you guys. It wouldn't be a problem for us to include it in there. It's just another road. I just need, staff needs direction from you guys if you're okay with that being added to the list of projects. Because if we had had the comment in time, we probably would have been able to respond something about we're deferring to traffic, or you need to tell us if you want it incorporated in the model or not. So just let us know what you guys want to do.
Well, I mean, we have to look at how it will impact the system, because if we're shutting down a road in the area, it's going to have impacts in an industrial area where it's then pushing traffic to other, I mean, it will have an impact on the system based on origin destination. A lot of it's stuff that won't be able to be modeled in the sense that it may push traffic to roads that aren't designed to withstand that additional heavy truck traffic. That's a whole other sidebar. But I guess we still need to look at how it would be done in the system so we can put it into one of the alternatives so we can evaluate the impact it has to the system.
Okay. I'll make note of it. If you guys can include it as part of your recommendation today, keep it official, that would be appreciated for staff. And one last thing, in case anyone has heard about the KAC money being added in.
Yeah. Yeah, what about that?
For relation to this project, because I've been asked, we are still moving forward with no KAC in any respect, the modeling or the alternatives, anything at all. Because that was the direction we were given by the policy committee, and FHWA agreed with us at the time. They supported that approach, so we're still moving forward. Now, if at some point the policy committee changes its mind, or FHWA steps in at some point when we ask for final approval and they say, this project's alive and well, it's incorporated in the STIP, it's moving forward, I don't know what impact that will have on the project, on the MTP. So just to give you guys a heads up, we are not moving forward with anything KAC in this version. But we're this is one of the worst things that could be happening right now.
Cross that bridge when we come to it.
Because it would mean a socioeconomic assumption update, a land use update, model update, the projects update, a fiscal constraint update.
All of the above.
Yes.
You ready for a motion, Stephanie?
I'm done, sorry.
No,
to
we
be about
haven't
now.
opened its public comment yet, so.
Can you give,
We've been getting public comment as we've been going along, so.
Only from one person, so we still have.
That was reasonable.
So that being said, Aaron, what would be the process and how involved timeline would it be to have that added back in? Because that question's going to come up.
I mean, we would have to redo the model, the socioeconomic assumptions, land use assumptions.
Start all over again.
It would, I would say a year or more of effort, depending on where we're at. If it gets added tomorrow, probably not as big of a deal. But if we're right at the point where we're asking for approval of the air quality determination by FHWA, and that project gets started again, they're gonna be like, wait, your air quality determination may not match up. And Craig mentioned this earlier, the reason why is federal legislation requires, the code requires that regionally significant projects are incorporated in the long-range plan for the MPO. So we kind of have a sticking point. Is the KAC considered a regionally significant project?
Yes.
FHWA would have to come in and weigh in on that. I personally, as staff, would have a hard time arguing that it's not a regionally significant project when it covers Anchorage and Matsu. And in the past, it has been called a regionally significant project. So I really don't know. Sorry, I don't really have a lot of information for it, other than just the possible impacts to the project later down the road.
Just a background question. The reason it came back in is because the bridge got hit and the road got closed.
I'm not
Do
sure.
you have any idea how that all played out? Why it ended up back in there?
Our only understanding is that the Senate added funding source in the capital budget. And it hasn't yet finished the budgeting process, but right now it's showing a $4 million and change capital budget for case, as well as Juno Access.
What is that $4 million going to do to a billion?
We got asked today to, Representative Newman was already asking the regional director to provide information on what it would take to start KAC up. So we're preparing a response right now.
And Representative Newman's district is where?
KGP Road on the
Big
other side.
I apologize
Yeah.
for bringing it up, but I knew it was going to come up at some point, so.
Well, then I have a follow-on question. So, yes, it's been recommended as part of the draft budget that has not been approved and finalized yet. But $4 million for what we recognize is a very, very expensive project. $4 million basically gets the studies picked back up, maybe. I mean, it's moving in that direction. So my question is, really, would it be necessary at that point to even include the kindergarten caution in this version of the MTP, recognizing that if the $4 million, they kick it back up, they kick it around again, like for the umpteenth time in my lifetime, you know, and nothing moves forward with it. I mean, the decision of whether something's going to move forward again will happen when we start our next MTP in less than 2 years, you know, after we finalize this. I mean, that's the point, is we're redoing this so often. It's there, it's not. I mean, my question would be is if you only have $4 million towards, you know, that large of a project, would we really have to completely start our model from scratch again?
That's up to FHWA.
Yeah.
Because if they see it and they say that's enough to trigger you having to look at this as part of your model and fiscal constraint, then we have to, because they're the ones who approve it ultimately. So do I think it's going to happen? Unless there's a significant gung-ho push where there's a lot of more money added to it, not likely within the time frame we have. But it's just something to be aware of, because that project has been difficult for the MTP in the past and has caused a lot of problems. So just giving everyone a heads up, we'll watch out for it and keep you guys updated.
Well, for the record, I'd support it if they move the capital to Willow.
It's now on the record. All right. Are there any other questions or comments on the items before us from the committee before I open it to public comment? All right. Then, public, this is now your opportunity for any questions or comments. John, if there's any of your comments that you have questions on, you're welcome to at this time ask questions. But it will come before you in 2 weeks as well.
Thanks for letting me chime in out of order. Sorry about your morning. That's no problem.
Correct.
I got well. It's the other way around.
Are there any other, I guess, questions or comments from the public? All right. Then the matter lies with the committee.
Move that the draft alternatives document and memorandum be forwarded to the policy committee with the recommendations that they include to execute the travel demand model with the modification that 104th Avenue be modeled as closed.
Are there any opposed to that motion? Hearing none, we are so moved.
Sorry, I forgot to say my name for the record last time. So Aaron Young, DOT and PF on the AMATS committee. Okay, so before you have the first quarter obligation report for FY, that should say 18, not 17. So within this first quarter, AMATS is required to be within plus or minus 15% of their overall allocation. If you look in the back, we are 1.14%, which means we have a little over $280,000 overspent. Don't worry, fine. This was back in the first quarter, which is October, November, December, so that's quite a while ago. And I'm just letting you know, kind of catching up, because we're a little behind. One of the main things is O'Malley Road has an overrun of a little over $1 million. I think they ran into a few hiccups while they were doing construction there. Jim, I don't know if you have additional info.
Yeah, they drilled the hole through a gas line.
Thank you for helping with that.
You discovered gas on O'Malley Road?
Unfortunately, we discovered it already in a gas line. Which is not the way
It's
to do
easier to
it.
get out of the ground.
So we show an increase there, which we'll go ahead and cover. On a good note, I just got an email today about Abbott Road going out for bid, or for, what is it? What did they say? It was for bid or for actual construction? Like,
For bid.
okay.
Yeah.
So Abbott Road Phase 2, as you see on here, it's the second item, the 8.8 million. So it's been obligated. Like I said, we're a little behind, but we're fine. Not too much on the roadways. The non-motorized on the next page. We're doing really well on the non-motorized. We are a little over $5 million expected to obligate this year for non-motorized improvements off of things like Fish Creek rehabilitation, Benson Boulevard rehabilitation from Minnesota to Arctic, I believe, or Spenard. It's the southern path.
all in
Yeah,
Arctic.
yeah. It's really nice. I'm really happy that we're doing it because it's kind of upgrading that pathway, making it a lot nicer. You know, getting it out from being back in the DMV driveway to the front, so it's easier for cars and people to cross that section. There's some bike implementation projects. It's all going really well, and then CMAX trudging along like normal. Air quality in the Anchorage transit marketing. And then the rest of the CMAX stuff's okay. That's all I had.
So along with the comment that the top should say FY 18, it's your footer, your dates need to be updated there too. Are there any other questions or comments from me? Are there any questions or comments from the public?
Thank you.
The next item is the non-motorized, that's supposed to say non-motorized transportation plan.
Sure.
Yes, it should. Okay. Okay.
So Joni is out of town, unavailable, but quick update. There will be a walk audit. Well, first, on the next Thursday, May 17th, the community advisory group meeting for the plan. I will have to figure out or find out where that's going to be, so let you know. The following day, Friday, May 18th, there will be a walk audit, I believe, starting at this location at 10 a.m. and then an agency advisory group meeting at 11:30. So they'll do a walk audit somewhere in this area. Expect to have draft recommendations at both of those meetings. Postpone the public open house for now, and we'll get feedback back from the advisory group and prepare for that when we can next schedule that public open house.
Question? Walk audit? I haven't quite heard that term. You mean you're gonna field trip?
No? You've never done a walkout? No.
We did one last year when Mark Fenton came up. Basically, you have groups who do a walk audit. You walk out there and you look at areas that could be improved for non-motorized transportation. Looking at street widths, looking at obstacles in the way, impediments to walking, keep track of all that, bring back, report back.
Okay,
There's
now I know.
There's an organized score sheet to go with it.
I've been away so long.
Usually there's kind of checklists you can use to look at things, but it's usually trying to get a variety of viewpoints as you're out walking a corridor, because everybody looks at things a little bit different. trying to find the missing links, trying to find, when you're looking at ADA, things are within arm's reach, and, measuring, looking at heights different. I mean, it's really trying to make sure that you're being consistent, connected, and, doing an evaluation with a variety of eyes. A group of
Dare I
eyes.
say, context sensitive. Oh, no, that's old.
Yeah, so.
Hard to stay
Still
hip.
do that.
Okay, thank you.
Is that scheduled on the Bike to Work day for coordination or?
That's a great question.
Sorry, I missed that.
Don't have an answer.
Yeah.
It's not done on
Find out.
purpose.
What's that?
I don't think it was just, it wasn't on purpose.
Just sheer happenstance, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And related to non-motorized, next Friday is Bike to Work Day. Oh, that's also on here. It's on,
It is.
yeah, it's down there, yes. Yesterday was Bike to School Day. There were some wonderful pictures being shared, and I saw a lot of families biking together yesterday morning. It was kind of, it's great to see. Although it's also kind of entertaining to see if as many people bike on those days, we would need to really invest in more bike racks across the municipality of Anchorage.
Well, on next door, South Edition, one parent posted, bike to school day, we did that. 32 homeless camps they counted at Chester Creek in the space that they did. And that's a deterrent to biking.
Yeah, so,
Fine.
Especially with that parent coming along.
Yeah.
any other questions on the non-motorized plan and those events planned for next week? Questions or comments from the public? The next item is the Spinard Corridor Plan.
So as you know, he came last month to release that creature. Step back a little bit, solicited agency comments and are waiting for those comments.
Is there a reason why it never got distributed?
I believe the idea was it was presented at the meeting and they should have had it then.
Because the problem is it hasn't been distributed, and so my staff, nobody has it other than me, and I don't have the time to dig through 153-page documents.
Got it.
I mean, that's the problem, is that, for agencies to really review it, it has to go to staff, and it was never distributed, so I don't know that
I
I'm
will
going to
get with
any
Theed and
comments.
have him do something about that.
Yeah.
Electronic could be fine.
You have our.
The URL,
It's on the website. It's on AMATS website with a link, but.
We can send that out.
So we're back to staff going out and finding one for,
Yeah.
I don't know about your staff, but mine have lots of other things that they're reviewing and looking at too, so makes it problematic.
I think you got our comments.
We did. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a 21-day distribution commitment. A commitment from agencies to review within 21 days of distribution.
Yeah.
Distribution.
And of distribution, and it hasn't been distributed.
Well, it was distributed electronically. So this is the first I heard that someone wanted it in a different format. So we will go ahead.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean someone else didn't hear that, but it's first I heard that it did not get distributed or it was requested to be distributed again. So I will work on getting that out. You got it at the meeting, it was available at the meeting, it was
Right.
distributed electronically at the last meeting, so I didn't know that someone needed it again. I will get that. The plan is to come back to the TAC in June or clearly possibly July for document release. The contract for that ends at the end of June, so we already have a TORA amendment in. I'm just waiting for the muni manager to sign that, so to go to the end of the year. So the contractor can continue to help us.
Is there gonna be some sort of interim step where they still come back with the comments and try to resolve them?
Is there going to be an interim step to resolve?
Where they take, they got our comments, the city's comments, DOT's comments, and try to resolve those before they come back here? Or
I
we gotta-
think the plan is to do a work session. I have to check the staff. Yeah, unfortunately, Joni is out of town, and Theed has had another engagement, couldn't make this meeting, so that's what I know about that.
Comments are due May 21st at this point.
Again, if they need a redistribution, then I guess we have to send that out again and delay that a bit.
Okay.
We might, if May 10th, if I can get May 21st, maybe. doable from my perspective, but I don't know everybody else's perspective. What day is that?
That's a Monday, 2 weeks.
Okay. Helen's like, I will attend, definitely. Are there any other questions or comments? Are there any questions or comments from? All right, so the next item is the coordinated human services transportation plan update.
Good afternoon, Jamie Acton, Senior Planner, AMATS. So let's see, my consultant got a little break from me. I was gone for about 10 days, so they had some time to do some edits, and sounds like we are ready for the release of the survey that's going to be going out to transportation providers and agencies and organizations that provide services to seniors, people experiencing disabilities, low income, limited English proficiency groups, about their transportation services that are provided, and then also their transportation needs. So excited to get that out the door. Last week I submitted a grant that would help potentially bolster that contract by $35,000 for additional PI and outreach that goes directly to those populations that are being served by this plan. So, you know, anybody that does public involvement knows that $35,000 is a nice chunk of change to be able to do some direct outreach. The nice thing about this grant from the Community Transportation Association of America is that it requires zero match. So for AMATS, those are our favorite kind of grants. I don't have to go beg, borrow, or steal any match money. And then it also, the timeliness of that grant is perfect because it runs right up against the end of our contract at December 31st. So the timing and everything is just fantastic on that one. So hope to get that survey out and some email updates about where we are in the planning process. Our consultant is going to be diving into drafting the document starting probably mid-June. So hope to have a draft to you all at some point during the summer for your review, agency review, and start to take a peek at that before we go through the fall and start really looking at the public piece again. So that's kind of all I have for that one.
Any questions for Jamie? Any questions from the public? Okay. Thank you. Oh, like to work. I didn't realize like work. It's all over.
I was going to give a quick update on that one.
Okay.
Oh, do you want anything else? Or?
Yeah, I have a quick one for the next one, the MTP update.
Oh, sorry, I skipped. I'm sorry.
I know we just did
it. No, I have notes, and the way I scribbled things, I checked something up. Sorry, Erin, I wasn't trying to think. All right, 6E, the 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
Just to give you a quick, at the work session, we heard a number of comments from people about some concerns that our surveys were pretty narrowly responded to by a certain group of the population that were mostly non-motorized users, and we hadn't really heard from any of the commuters that use like the Glen Highway, for example. So staff has been working on trying to get the Chamber, am I saying that right? Okay, the Chamber of Commerce to help us distribute our information out to major employers around town, around Anchorage, so that they can try and get it to their employees if it's okay, and at least have some kind of, we're reaching out to a group just like everyone else that's focused on kind of the car, because we want to make sure we're not ignoring them in light of other things. So we're just trying to do a little more outreach. So if you guys have any recommendations on who we can outreach to, we'd love to hear that.
I'm doing some.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? I think I should call it the audience. This kind of feels like an audience moment. All right. Now we're on the Bike to Work Day 2018.
I should have put my items as back to back. So Bike to Work Day is next Friday. Registration is open. We are using linkak.org, which some of you are familiar with. That's our multimodal commute trip planner. And it also allows us to run challenges and survey and manage networks and teams and all sorts of incentives and really great stuff. So this is our first time using it. And there's been some learning curve there, but it's been a great, it's been great to see the participation uptick in the last couple days. As Alaskans, I feel like we wait till the 11th hour to get a lot of these things done. So really pushing out a lot of information, and hey, don't forget to register and don't forget to log your trips. Kind of a cool thing with Link AK is that when you do register, if you're using a program like Strava already, tracking biking, running, things like that, you can connect the two and you won't even have to worry about logging your trips. It'll just automatically take care of that for you. So that's some really good data. We'll be able to like have some heat maps created. We'll be able to see people's A to B, start to finish, origin, destinations, whatever things can I call it. And so there are buffs this year. There are no t-shirts, but there are some high visibility buffs. So when you register, that's one of the things that you're being put in for. So if you are a competitive type and you want a buff, you better go to Link AK and get registered. So there's
what's a buff?
So a buff is like a neck warmer / headbands. Like it can be used for many things. So no more t-shirts these days. Yes.
And where's the buff pickup?
The buff pickup will be with DHHS. But you have to be drawn.
It's at Bosco.
It's at your place? Oh.
Trying to help.
Then I have wrong information. My fault. Sorry. Bosco's is providing buff pickup.
So right by Bosco's?
Right by Bosco's. There's also 47 treat stations this year. So I think our treat map is just, they're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Treat heat map.
Yeah, treat heat map. So yeah, 47.
That's gonna skew the data.
Just saying. I know.
Because like so many people go to get bacon
all the way around. Yeah, really long trips. So some of the data that we'll be able to get through Link Egg Day is like how much, what were our carbon emission savings, how many calories were estimated to be burned, what was money saved, things like that. So miles and everything. So it's kind of some neat data and some fun challenge boards and leaderboards that the community will be able to see. And I've been in the middle of a conversation between JBEAR and Air National Guard all day today of some back and forth trash talking that's been going on between their teams. So people are gearing up and looking forward to it. So been having a great time working with Shannon and Dana on this. So thank you. But other than that, Bike to Work Day.
And we're praying for good weather.
I looked at the forecast already, so we're just gonna keep praying.
Well, I say
A lot can change.
I know, a lot can change. We've been hit and miss the past couple
Yep.
of years. I mean, was it 2 years ago that we had snow?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
We've had that which we do not see.
Yeah, exactly. The weight
Oh,
stuff.
come on, it just adds a whole new feel to the event.
When your numbers drop in half.
It was sleeting at my house this past weekend, though. I mean, that's the thing, is that it's still just sometimes the precipitation is occurring. They keep calling it mixed precipitation. I call it
Yeah.
not making me happy. All right. Thank you, Jamie. Yes. All right. Are there any other committee comments? Can we go to the order? Mr. Hanson?
I see, I just got notice that, especially for next Friday, Bike to Work, everybody be cautious. The municipal roadways are open for construction activities starting Monday. So we go to our second season. The first one's winter, the second season's construction. So
Road limits are going up on that.
No,
No?
not completely.
Okay.
not completely, but it
We're
is
going to
open.
100% no overloads as of Monday. We never go from weight restricted to complete summertime permitting in one fell swoop.
So be careful. observe signs, flagmen, when you see it. Don't want anybody getting hurt.
And there's a couple projects already underway.
Yeah.
It's C Street, Tudor, and Silver Highway.
Those are state
Yeah,
projects.
they've all been kind of, yep.
Okay, well, building on that, I mean, they've been working on the on-ramp to the port. It's been closed for about 10 days now. I haven't heard an update from the project team yet. They're going to meet their target to be completed on the 13th, but we hope so because the first cruise ship arriving in Anchorage is Monday this year, Monday the 14th, which is a couple weeks earlier than in past. So that day we'll have a lot of bus traffic. The way, for people who don't know, once the ship docks and once they get the gangway placed from about 8 a.m. to about 9 p.m., there's a constant shuttle buses, like tour-sized buses that come around and pick people up and take them and drop them off at the Dining Center, and then they can, go to the museum, they spend the day in town, whatever. So you should see an influx of folks those days. And I was just noticing on the way here, the first real telltale sign of the other cruise ships that are showing up in Seward and people coming through. People with the yellow bags walking around from the souvenir shops. I saw 3 of them, 3 sets of those on the way here today. So they're here. More
I was gonna
pets.
say, were you stuck behind somebody on the highway?
No, more pets on the street. Just,
Yeah.
let's be nice.
Any other committee comments? Any public comments?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we started on time, we'll close on time, we're finishing